Hey everybody, Josh Sigurdson of World Alternative Media here, and we are joined once again by the most artistically talented name in the truth and freedom community, Benny Wills, who will be emceeing at our upcoming Anarcho Vegas event on July 21st. And he's got a new YouTube channel, Benny Wills, which I want everyone to go and subscribe to after the video, of course. And first of all, thank you for joining us.
Hey, it's my pleasure, Josh, and thank you for your kind words. I really appreciate that.
Well, you are an anomaly in the space because you have that artistic background that I find really important to kind of spread that message to the next level. It's one thing for me to sit here and be dry and say this and that, and you express it in a way that I don't think anyone else I know of does. So it's really important to push the message forward in an artistic way, and I think it reaches a lot of people. But anyway, we've got a lot to talk about today. But first, I'll start with the most difficult question in the world, because you do talk a lot about, you have the conspiracy guy character on JoyCamp, and really, really good work that you do there, by the way. And a lot of the subject matters that you go over involve, the kind of truther movement. And I have to ask, who or what do you think rules the world?
That is a complicated question. I'm pondering this all the time. This is that's the $64 million question. Like, who is it? Who is they? I think that there's the obvious people you can point to, those in power, those in government, who are obviously doing evil deeds and they don't have humanity in their best interest. I always equate it to like an infection. There are a few, for these purposes, let's say a few people who don't have the same level of empathy, you could say, as you and I do. And they're intent on corruption and keeping people in a state of unrest and disharmony. And they're like an infection. Mm-hmm. And I think there are very few. There's only a handful of people compared to the amount of people that are on planet Earth. There are only a few who are this psychopathic, but because, I always say, who else would want that job? Who else would want the job of being in control of people than someone who absolutely is crazy, power hungry, and doesn't care about humanity? Like, only a crazy person would want to be in charge of other people's decisions and their livelihood. So there's some people, and I think that there's some who are dealing with, I call them sorcerers sometimes and wizards, because I think they do dabble in some pretty dark, even occultist type satanic stuff, ritualistic and whatnot. And when they're in charge of things, it makes evil seem much more pervasive because they're in charge of all the pillars of our structure, and it's almost like osmosis. It permeates through. So it seems like the world is a lot more dangerous than it actually is because those who are governing, the governing forces, are evil. So it feels like evil's all around, but it's really not. I think that's why we do what we do, because we can see how obviously easy it would be to shift that power structure if only we could, clear people's minds a little bit more and get them to stop trusting authority so much. So it's, to answer your question, there are people who are dabbling in maybe even ancient understandings of how reality works and how to manipulate reality. And they may or may not be influenced by other forces that they may be aware of or may not be aware of, that they're like, vessels for something much darker.
Yeah.
They're and a lot of them are in government, and they're controlling things behind the scenes and their bloodlines and all that stuff.
I think it's a really good answer. And I mean, like, that's the thing. A lot of people will blame one category or one group of people or one political ideology. Some people will blame, Israel. Other people will blame Saudi Arabia. Others will blame China or the U.S. empire, etc. And I think a lot of it has to do with, like this idea of power, this notion of controlling people. And regardless of, the figurehead, the actor, the theatrics surrounding surrounding, the end goal of controlling the populace. It's the fact that they're controlling the populace that should matter. The people should look at the actions rather than the people often behind the actions. And I think you put it very clearly. Like, there's seems to be an obvious problem with you look at Bohemian Grove and examples like this. It's like, obviously, very obviously, there are a lot of people in power that happen to be involved in some really creepy, nefarious stuff. But I mean, the question of who rules the world, it also carries into why do you feel people have such an incessant need to be ruled? I mean, we talk about, all the people that are getting ruled by these psychopaths, but why do people allow this to happen, and why do people feel it's necessary that they need rulers to control their every move?
Gosh, because I think it's just heavy, heavy, heavy indoctrination. I think we are really groomed to be powerless and to feel like we're powerless and to feel like this experience isn't nearly as significant as it really is.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it's generational. So when you have a disempowered generation raising another generation through the same indoctrination, it's going to be very hard for people to really snap out of it. So I think it comes from, it starts at birth and even pre-birth, because it's our parents as well, and even their parents, and in some cases even, generations beyond that. So people are really weakened by having, we're bombarded with poisoned food, poisoned air, poisoned water, poisoned television, news, everything. All systems go as far as controlling people's minds and to keep us weak. Even what we are taught about the universe itself and how meaningless our existence is and how random it all is. And I think this is all just to keep us submissive and to keep us in line. I mean, we start going to school at, 4 years old, and we get used to this habit of waking up when we don't want to wake up and going to some place we don't want to be and learning stuff we don't really need to know. And then, we're expected to know what we want to do with the rest of our lives by the time we're 18 and get a job and join the workforce. And if not, you go to college and, you explore yourself sexually and get yourself into massive debt. And it's just a vicious, brutal cycle. And then, where we call this progress and call this order, and it's just chaos.
Yeah, it says a lot about the school system, especially looking back into the 19th century and what a third grader would be tested on versus what a 12th grader would be tested on today. I mean, a lot to be said about the fact that, children spend the majority of their childhood in a public school indoctrination camp, and people wonder why, kids and then adults later on are so dependent on the government, because it's like mommy and daddy. I mean, you cannot consider it anything else when you are basically being raised by the government with little times in between where you see your parents when you grab dinner, then you go to bed, and then you wake up and go back to school. It just seems incredibly crazy that we've gotten to a point where we are dependent on the government to raise children. That whole mantra of it takes a village, it seems absolutely crazy. But what do you think? I mean, you mentioned something that's very important there regarding children spending, some of the most important years of their lives in a public school system, and time that they could be spending learning what they're all about, what they want to do with their life. I mean, what do you think about that?
Yeah, and they're away from their parents. They're indoors. They're outside. They're away from the sun. We're taught to be afraid of the sun. I mean, there you go. Like there's a proof right there. I mean, the sun gives us life, and we're taught to be afraid of it. And if we go out in it, you make sure you lather yourself up with a bunch of chemicals and don't get burned. So we're literally like sacrificing our daylight hours away from our parents, away from our own creativity, because hardly anything in the curriculum for public school nurtures creativity and to really expand our minds. So yeah, and then you're so disempowered and afraid by the time you get out of school, and you're worshiping authority. So and we're taught to chase dreams rather than, how we can contribute. This is a world that requires contribution and requires participation in order to, have it maximized. And we are instead taught to pursue these vain materialistic dreams that are ultimately unattainable. And then we fall short. We settle for some 9-to-5 job, and we're broken down. And then we long for 5 o'clock when we can go home and have a drink and wake up the next morning and do it all over again. And it's just insane.
Yeah, a lot of people would blame capitalism for that. I think it has a lot more to do with people just accepting being controlled, accepting their fate, this fate that doesn't need to be, this fate that is, well, I could strive for more, but I could just settle in this comfortable position where at the end of my life, I look back and go, I regret not doing this when I had the chance. I think that is one of my biggest fears in life is being an older person or being on my deathbed and looking back and regretting what I didn't do when I had the chance. But too many spend most of their life just settling, and it's that old John Lennon quote, life is what happens when you're busy making other plans. And I know that you've been really passionate about doing whatever you want in your life. I mean, I think this is something that everyone should follow that goal, even with the risks and the downsides and the possibility of failing. I mean, what do you think about, this possibility of failing versus the possibility of success?
Well, to touch on what you said about my own personal journey, I do whatever I want, but it's not in a way, it's not in a selfish sort of a selfish way. Mm-hmm. Everything I do is to further my own life, the people who I love in my life, their lives, and humanity as a whole, and individuals, I should say, rather individuals, and to make the world a better place. So that's my goal, and what I'm doing with my life is shattering the paradigms that I was taught to abide by that would keep me complacent. So I'm testing the rules. I'm basically, I've realized at this point in my life that I know what it feels like to be humiliated. I know what it feels like to be embarrassed. I know what it feels like to be broke. I know what it feels like to be, down and out. I know what it feels like to be heartbroken. I know what it feels like to fail. And I'm still here. So I've documented that. I've processed all that. And there's nothing to fear about taking chances anymore. I do what I want because I know that I will bounce back from anything I endeavor to do. And I've proven that to myself now. So I basically just it's like hacking the matrix. That's my motto, hack the matrix. I punch in, a code to see what will happen. And and the whole point is adjusting along the way. So my expectations are low. My intentions are high. And, I walk through the doors that are opening, and instead of getting stuck, hung up, banging on the ones that are, locked.
Mm. Yeah, and a lot of people refuse to break away from the paradigm, again, out of comfort. But I mean, you did something that a lot of people have not been able to do, which is break away from the paradigm of Hollywood. I mean, you were a child actor. I actually just saw the clip of you in Living Color as a kid, which is enjoyable. If anyone wants to check that out, that's on your new channel, Benny Wills. But I want to ask a bit about breaking away from Hollywood and what it was like to go up against I guess it's kind of like this repeated mantra in Hollywood that you must think a certain way, and if not, you don't get work.
Yeah, well, I spent a lot of my life in Hollywood, and not necessarily always in Hollywood, always on an acting career path. So I spent a lot of time getting degrees in theater and doing training and doing a lot of stage productions, and I'm a classically trained actor. And I was born in LA, lived there till I was 10, and then I moved back when I was 25. And then I spent 8 years there. And, it's just, once you're there for so long, you see it as being, I don't know, the shine goes away, the allure. I mean, you start seeing, especially growing up in it, and you see celebrities and stuff at lunch or coffee shops or wherever. It's not that exciting. It's like, oh, look, there's so-and-so. And it just, the allure of it goes away. And when you're on set as well, I mean, I and Sonia have both worked quite a bit, and it's not that glamorous. You usually have to wake up and be there by like 5 a.m. and, you get your hair done and makeup, and then you just sit around in your trailer most of the day until the 5 minutes they'll need you, and you go to set and you do your thing, and then you do it over and over and over and over and over and over and over again until finally they're happy. And then you go back and wait around some more, and you go to the craft service table, and it's just like, it's not that glamorous. And then everybody's fighting for these same jobs while their lives are, going by. And it just becomes very desperate. I mean, Los Angeles has a real desperate energy about it, and a real status-driven, materialistic, vain aspect. And no one's ever satisfied. That's what I learned from it. No one's ever happy. I know some people who are really successful, and if they're not in the public eye enough, if they're not working all the time, they get anxiety, and they're neurotic, and that's why the women all get plastic surgery when they hit 40. I mean, it's because it's this need to be relevant and to be
Yeah.
popular and to be rich and famous, and it's all BS, man. It's just ridiculous. And then once I learned that it was, and I really accepted that it was the real propaganda wing of the, the governing forces, it was directly at odds with my integrity, and I had to sacrifice that dream to live a better life. And it was sad because I love acting, but I had to walk away from it because it jeopardized my integrity too much. And I'm much happier now, doing what I do and from far away, and being able to like really embrace my own artistic voice rather than try to fit myself into a mold of what someone else thinks I should be.
Yeah, I mean, I've done some acting myself, not at your level, but I've done a lot of acting myself. And I mean, the fact is, you watch a movie and you're entertained. You go onto a set and it's boring. It's incredibly boring. There's nothing going on for most of the time other than people, yelling at each other, working on things, talking over the script, blah, blah, blah. And then you actually go in front of the camera and it's a few moments and you do it over and over again. And it's just, it's not fun. And people are living out of motel rooms, and it's absolutely horrible what's going on in a lot of cases in Hollywood. Now, I should say, I mean, I'm a huge movie fan. I'm a huge fan of old film, especially, and the being artistic. I think it's great to see people who are artistically, connected to doing a film or acting and that kind of thing. It's great, but most people, it seems, are more based on, well, look at me. I'm in this movie. Everyone look at me, and it's unfortunate to see a lot of Hollywood stray in that direction when it started off as a beautiful art form, and you just don't see a whole lot of great films coming out, especially in the mainstream today. But I wanted to go into another thing that's in the news, Benny, because I wanted to ask you what do you think of the growing Antifa attacks, like what we saw happen to gay Asian conservative writer Andy Go in Portland? It seems especially the left, but the right as well, are constantly ramping up their divide tactics, and no one seems to be listening to each other, just acting out emotionally to violently support their sports team or form of government order. What do you think?
Yeah, man, I think it's heating up. I think it's going to be a really contentious build up to this coming election next year. I'm so not looking forward to dealing with political conversations, whether I'm involved in them or just hearing them anywhere I go. And I think I hate to say it because I don't want to like manifest this reality, but I think it's going to be violent. I think they want it to be violent. I think that the Antifa and the extremist leftist position, and again, no one's necessarily innocent in this, and when you pick a side, but the left side of the equation is so out of control, and they're being told that it's okay to hit first. And I mean, that's like rule one of life. I mean, I was taught that as a kid, like you don't ever throw the first punch, period. And they're being taught to throw the first punch because someone is a Nazi. And what the media has successfully done is equate Nazi with anyone who's not a leftist. So basically they're saying you have free range to punch someone who is white, who's conservative, because they are inherently a racist and a bigot because they don't vote on the same party lines as you. Mm-hmm. And I think they're trying to provoke war. And of course, the right side of the equation has access to firearms, or everyone has access, but they have it in their, their artillery. And I think they're trying to provoke they want the right to shoot first, but I don't know. It definitely feels like we're being groomed towards some sort of civil war. To what extent what that could ultimately mean, I don't know. But yeah, it's getting bad, man. It's violent, and you see it in the programming on television. They are teaching people to be intolerant. It's funny because they preach tolerance, but they're taught to be intolerant of anybody who disagrees with them, and it's reaching like scary proportions.
Yeah, and it gets to that point where instead of covering your eyes, ears, and mouth, people are just covering their eyes and ears and opening their mouth, and too many are not listening, but a lot of people are talking. And I think that goes for both sides. But yeah, especially the left, you see this notion of tolerance. Meanwhile, they're probably the most intolerant people I've ever seen.
Exactly.
And then they're just attacking each other in the street, and you got people on the right as well. If I call out Trump for anything, it's I'm then a communist or something, and it's like no one's listening. They just look for sides or buzzwords or ways to benefit their own viewpoint. Meanwhile, we have these people in power that are giggling and laughing at us as we're fighting each other, and they're getting away with literal murder. It just seems like no one wants to listen to other viewpoints.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. And and the solution is bigger government. I mean, that's what they want. So they're teaching us to pitting us against each other and saying, yeah, see, you can't trust that guy over there. You can't trust him. He doesn't have your best interests at heart, but we do. Come over here. Yeah, we have green energy because things are bad and we've hurt the environment. So here, give us more money and then we'll provide you with green energy. I mean, stuff like that. And it's all seductive and it's romantic sounding and it sounds like it's all good, but it's actually just more power to government. And that's what they want. I mean, I feel like because the Trump situation is so strange. I mean, he's just a strange dude. He's an enigma, and I can't quite get my mind around exactly what he represents. But what thing he definitely symbolizes is the how do I say it? The cementing of the divide. So when he got elected president, it absolutely set everyone on their own island. I mean, then the left and the right just became so polarized so fast that everything's been ramped up ever since then. And yeah, I mean, like you said, no one's willing to listen to each other. I feel like before, at the very least, I mean, I bring this point up when I speak at conferences. I mean, 10 years ago, I was maybe written off as just a conspiracy theorist or whatever. People who didn't want to hear what I had to say, they were like, oh, whatever, Benny. And they would just ignore me and like brush me off. But now those same people are like, how dare you, man? How dare you say that? That is dangerous. That is hate speech. You're a homophobe. I can't believe you're thinking that way. How? And then they leave the conversation. I'm like, wow. To me, I've only gotten better as a person in the last 10 years. I've only devoted myself more to truth and to being good and to being, the best version of myself I can be. Yet the perception from those who don't want to hear what I have to say is getting worse. I mean, I have family members now that won't talk to me, and that wasn't the case 10 years ago.
Yeah. A lot of people are so desperate to be victims as well. I mean, they look for any opportunity to become a victim. I was just in a third world country, and I'll tell you, people are happier there than anywhere I've seen in the world. In the middle of Mauritania, Africa, most happiest people I've ever met, but they're living in complete poverty in shacks, but they don't have television. They're not told to be mad about things. Yet people who are so much better off and so much more privileged on the other side of the world are desperately looking for things to be a victim of because it allows them for people to feel bad for them, and hopefully mommy and daddy government or some kind of entity will come and save them from themselves. And I think this is becoming a real epidemic as we walk further and further towards complete dependency, weakness, and stupidity by design.
Yep, absolutely. I mean, it's obvious. I mean, just watching, because I can't really stomach watching these debates, presidential debates, but I can't help it. It's hard to ignore memes, and there's a lot of memes going around. And I saw some breakdowns of this first Democratic or whatever you call it, Democratic debate, and some of the stuff they're saying. I mean, it's just nonsense. It's just nonsense. And I feel like maybe it's either me being more attuned to hear it, perhaps, or a combination. But I don't think it used to be so blatantly ridiculous. I mean, they're saying nonsense. It's like obviously extremist left point of views, not just like, hey, we're kind of, we lean left and here's the topics and we may disagree on this, and they don't disagree on anything. They're all in the same boat about everything. And it's mind numbing. It's crazy. It's extreme.
Yeah.
Obviously extreme.
Yeah, and as we everything kind of ramps up further and further, and as we get ramped up, I guess another thing that's kind of happening, and by the way, this video will definitely be demonetized, but I don't care. We're talking about the truth, and the truth does not reach daylight on a thing like YouTube, so make sure to check out our other options. But anyway, the medias are, across the board, are being muzzled, and journalists like Julian Assange are thrown in a cage and apparently drugged or poisoned. I have to ask, are we starting to see the climax of the information war and the rise of the global order, in your opinion? Because it seems like, independent medias are being muzzled. They don't even care anymore. They're just shutting down tens of thousands of YouTube channels. They are demonetizing thousands of people, like our friend Dan Dix from Press for Truth just got completely demonetized on YouTube. Ford Fisher had news to share. Steven Crowder has been dealing with lawsuits and stuff like that. But at the same time, people who are actually going out as well and just spreading information, like Julian Assange, whether you like him or not, he's being thrown in a cage and no one has talked about him in weeks. I haven't heard anything in the news about Julian Assange. So do you think we are getting to that climax I speak of, like the climax of that information war and the rise of the global order?
In a way, I do. I think that, I feel like they're in their end game. So they're pulling out all the punches now. And it's, on one hand, it's really terrifying how much the censorship is being implemented, and it's frustrating and it's just awful. But on the other hand, it shows how much influence we have, because they have to go to such extreme measures to silence it. And of course, to the media, they try to lump everybody who's not on one side into one big group, but it's not that at all. Only people who watch the news would believe that. It's actually anybody who has anything to say that's somewhat counter to or alternate perspective to what the mainstream narrative is, and that's most people. So I feel like the media is making it seem like it's much worse than it is. But when I go, you and I both travel around. Like you just said, you went to Africa, and I've been traveling consistently for a couple of years now, and most places are pretty chill, pretty quiet. People are pretty calm, pretty cool. And most people aren't buying into this agenda, at least to the extent to which the media wants them to. And I don't know. So everywhere I go, I see the hope for a resistance against this, because they're not buying into it. You go to the cities, you go to like LA, San Francisco, Seattle, Portland, New York, places like that. Yeah, it's going to feel like everybody is on this leftist brigade, and they are. But everywhere else feels pretty chill. And I think the media is trying to make it seem like it's much. That's what they're trying to make it. Everybody who's not in those cities feel like they are some racist, homophobic, white supremacist, and they're not. And I think that's the truth. The truth will prevail. And they are into their end game, and they do want to implement global control. And I think that I think they would have liked to have been further along than they are at this point. And I think that there's definitely obstacles, and we are those obstacles.
Oh, absolutely. I think that you note that, the mainstream media, for example, people have been leaving the mainstream media in droves for a long time now, and their ratings have been crashing. There was a time when there would be like 75 million viewers a night on, Dateline NBC or something like that, or 2020 or one of those old, major news shows. And now it's terrible. It's pathetic. And many YouTubers are getting way more viewers than, the nightly news. So then YouTube starts making it so that you could only see, mainstream medias in your suggestions and all that kind of stuff, or in your search terms when you look up certain things on YouTube. But I feel like, they're basically shooting themselves in the foot, because it's like they try to promote this victimhood mentality and this mentality of dependence and this mentality of identity and anger involved in that identity, but without any ideas surrounding that identity. So you see in a lot of cases, all you hear about is people fighting and, these shootings and all these attacks. And even, for example, I remember hearing all this stuff about the no-go zones in Paris. People are getting acid thrown in their face. And yeah, that was happening. But like, I spent time in a no-go zone in Paris, and it's like blonde women walk around in short skirts, but you're not going to hear about all the good things that happen. You're only going to hear about the bad things. You're only going to hear about the person who got acid thrown in their face. You're not going to hear about all the people who didn't get acid thrown in their face today, right?
Good point.
So, you get these narratives off the media that it's like, it's terrible everywhere, but you go everywhere and people are basically the same everywhere. People are nice, kind. They just want to get along in their life and not be bothered. And, you find friends basically everywhere. I don't know what your experiences have been.
Everywhere. Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's one of the best things about going to these conferences and events, is meeting all the people. And I don't know what your experience has been, but I brought this up on a podcast recently. I noticed that, because, you and I both go to a lot of these events, and most people that I talk to, most of the audience members that I talk to, that I get into a conversation with, are only recently switched on. They're recently activated. I mean, of like the last couple of years, whether it was, say, Bitcoin that did it, or even something like the Las Vegas shooting or whatever, anything, any event or any moment or new thing may be the thing that snaps them out of their trance. And I noticed that most people I talk to are recently switched on. I mean, 2 to 3 years. And I think that's really promising to show that, because the media has been clamping down more and more and more gradually over the course of definitely the 15 years that I've been, going down the rabbit hole. And most people are only of the last couple of years really starting to question things. That's why they're drawn to these conferences, because they're like, okay, something's weird here, and I want to go hear people talk about it. And I think that's incredibly powerful and incredibly promising.
Yeah, I feel like the establishment keeps digging themselves deeper, honestly. I mean, my mother, for example, doesn't like any of this stuff. She doesn't watch my videos. She doesn't care about any of this stuff, honestly. But I remember when the Boston bombing happened, she's like, wait a second, I don't trust this story. There's something wrong about this. And now she just questions all these mainstream stories. And I feel like every time something like this happens, more people question it. And I completely agree. Every new conference I go to, I find people that just got switched on. And interestingly, it was either by Ron Paul, some shooting, some false flag of some kind, Bitcoin, which is an inanimate digital currency, which is crazy that that turns people onto all this. But I mean, I think we are winning, and I'm very optimistic. But I wanted to ask you if you could tell us a bit about your new channel called Benny Wills, and why you chose to create your own channel apart from JoyCamp.
Sure, man. Thanks for asking. So JoyCamp was a group endeavor that I started with my best friend, Kevin, back in 2012. And we did, anybody doesn't know, we did mainly comedy, sketch comedy. And it was great. We really had a great run for a long time, especially when Kevin and I were roommates living together in an apartment in Los Angeles. We were very productive. But it's hard to keep a group together. And we started that in 2012. It's 2019 now. When I ended up breaking up with my acting career, I had to get out of LA. So I moved away with my now fiance about a little over a year ago. And, just based off distance alone, I mean, it's really hard to be productive in that way, to produce content as a group. So I was, and meanwhile, I started getting invited more and more to conferences and events, and, getting speaking slots. And I started utilizing those speaking slots to perform, because I'm a performer. And I do what I call now stand-up poetry, a term I coined, because it's a blend between stand-up comedy and slam poetry, and it's received really well. And so as that's been naturally developing, because I never would have dreamed that's what I'd be doing, but it's, again, just the natural evolution of things. And since that's been taking off, it felt like it was confusing the issue too much to keep those videos, the poetry videos, on the JoyCamp channel. And after a lot of encouragement from people I know and people who meet me, I had the courage and the confidence to branch out on my own finally, and just be, take the plunge and start over from zero, and just trust that whoever reaches will be the right people, and just to not worry about the numbers, especially with what's going on YouTube and all that. But that's really it. I wanted to branch away from the group and really just step into my own individual path. And yeah, it's exciting, and I'm really excited to, move forward with it and see what I can come up with. Because it's not just going to be poetry. It's going to be, I don't know, I finally have my own freedom to express in my own way, and we'll see. But yeah, go check it out. youtube.com/Benny Wills. You can follow me on Instagram at instagram.com/Benny.Wills, so at Benny.Wills. And I'm all over Facebook, and I'm going to be putting all my videos also on BitChute and DTube and Minds.com and all the other platforms.
The plethora of other platforms that are coming up.
Yeah, I mean, I'll keep them all on the table. But please, if you want to go to YouTube and subscribe to my channel, that would really help me out, because we need each other now more than ever. And I think the content is quality, and I think you won't be disappointed once you subscribe.
Yeah, I highly recommend everyone go and subscribe to Benny Wills on YouTube. And I mean, I can't get over how good your memory is when it comes to just going on stage. I've seen you on stage at several events over the years, and it's mind-boggling. And on top of that is really, really good poetry. Great, word for it, stand-up poetry. I don't know. I think that works pretty well. But I wanted to ask you as we close this off, though, because obviously you can find the link to Benny Will's channel linked below in the comments. I hope everyone checks that out. But also, you will be emceeing at Anarcho Vegas 2019 on July 21st. And what are you most excited about as we come up on the event? Because I know there's conference after conference these days, and there's a lot of that, and you're definitely getting your work in when it comes to being an MC. You were just an MC at the Red Pill Expo, which was awesome, and you were received really well. So what are you most excited about going into Anarcho Vegas 2019?
The thing I'm always most excited about, which is connecting with people. That's it. I mean, that's the most exciting thing always. I love making real life connections away from the computer. And I love that it's just such a beautiful symbiosis that I have something to offer, so that I get to go to these events and to, like you said earlier, be the guy who's has a real creative platform. I love being that guy. What an honor, and what a cool, unexpected development to be able to be that guy at these events. And so I love having something to offer, and I love whoever's moved by what I have to say. That's a really fulfilling feeling, and just meeting everybody and getting to hang out with like-minded people is so refreshing, and that's always. Oh, and also getting a front row seat to other excellent speakers. That's also one of the big perks of going to these things. So it's always the people, and it will always be the people. I can't wait to see who's there and reconnect with old friends and, meet new people.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be amazing. I can't wait here in Las Vegas, July 21st, 2019, with Larkin Rose's Candles in the Dark on the 19th and 20th, the Free Ross Party on the 20th, and of course it follows Freedom Fest and the Be Your Own Vault event on July 22nd as well. I'm looking forward to it. Jeff Berwick, J. Edward Griffin, Beau of the Fifth Column, David Rodriguez, so many people are going to be speaking there. It would take me all day to mention everyone, so make sure to check out anarchovegas.com for that, linked below in the comments and the description. Again, thank you so much, Benny, for speaking with us. And until next time, I'll be seeing you soon, I guess.
My pleasure, Josh. Yeah, anytime, and I'll see you in a couple weeks.
Like what you see here at WHAM? Don't forget to check the links below. GoFundMe, Patreon. We can't do it without you. Any donation is very much appreciated, especially as we're so heavily demonetized and censored and shadow banned. It's getting really bad, folks. If everyone just gave $1 single a month to, say, Patreon or our Subscribestar, where we do subscriber-only content, we could really get out of this rut that we are currently in as YouTube tries to stifle independent media and prop up the mainstream media. This is really important. This is one of the most important times in independent media history for us to say it's now or never. Let's keep moving forward and let's be that change that we wish to see in the world. Of course, there's also our Bitcoin address below as well as on the screen for you to scan if you please. And of course, we got events coming up. So make sure to check us out at anarchovegas.com. Anarchovegas.com. Use promo code WAM, that's WHAM, for a 10% discount on your tickets. It's on July 19th, 20th, and 21st in, of course, Las Vegas, Nevada. That's anarchovegas.com. Make sure to check us out there and find us on websites like BitTube and Minds, and just try to support independent media, if not myself, any of the other big independent medias out there, to help us continuously bring our message to you free of charge so that we can really change the guard as we move forward into a dramatically polarized, crazy future. Let's try to make it as sustainable as possible. It comes down to you guys. You are the change you wish to see. You guys will help us get through these tough times. So anyway, check out all those links. And until next time, this is Josh Sigurdson signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change.
I'm sure you have already changed people's minds in your young age because you're involved, and I like that.